Good morning and welcome to the Slovakia ring for qualifying for the fourth round of the 2012 FIA GT1 World Championship. As I say, we're at the Slovakia ring in Slovakia, GT1's first visit to this circuit. FIA GT3 came here last year. My name is Jack Nichols. I'm here in the commentary box. Alongside me is John Watson. John, both of our first visits to this circuit, GT1's first visit to this circuit. Weather couldn't have been any better than it has been. It's a decent facility.
Yeah, it's a very nice facility, great circuit, quite long, surprisingly, 5.9 kilometres, 3.6 miles, 14 corners, but this year there will be a chicane, so we're going to call it a chicane, we're not going to number it. So that chicane will be between the exit of turn 3 and the hairpin down at exit of turn 2 and the hairpin down at turn 3.
And where better to start looking than the reigning winners from last time out in Navarra. That man, Steph Dusseldorp, on the left-hand side, you can just see getting suited and booted. Him and Fred Makavicki took a double victory in Navarra. That moved them to the joint top of the championship alongside Thomas Jaeger and Nicky Pastorelli. And the McLarens are looking strong again this weekend. Yes,
they are, and everybody's been expecting this level of performance. It's taken a little bit of time for McLaren and Hexus to get this MD412C GT1, not GT3, resolved to get it to the level of being competitive, reliable, and everything working. As we know, the well-oiled Hexus machine, be it with what they raced last year, the Aston Martin GT1s, or this year, the McLaren with Fred, always smiling Makavicki.
Yes, yeah, it's been great to see the McLarens pick up their pace so far, especially in the last race. They seem to have begun to cure the reliability problems. I don't want to curse them too much because obviously going into this qualifying session, anything could change. On the other side of the garage, we've got Alvaro Parent and Gregoire Demoustier, and they had engine troubles, didn't they? They're in the front of that McLaren, but they had trouble-free running yesterday, so with any luck, should be all right today.
Interestingly, I had a word with McLaren on the Tuesday just to ring up and say, my old team, well done, congratulations. And one thing that came through very, very clearly is how highly Alvaro Parent is held in the McLaren sort of folklore of McLaren. He's worked for the team for over a year doing the testing development, but also as a race driver. He's a smart race driver, and when it comes to pit stops, it's the kind of detail that a race driver can pick up time from. So he knows when the four wheels and tyres are being changed. The last wheel and tyre to get changed is the right front. So he's watching the mechanic on that right front put the tyre, take the one off, put the other on, and at the point when the car's coming off the jack, his finger is already on the button, turning the engine over, so as when it comes to the ground, it fires up, and he saves himself maybe a couple of seconds a lap. A lot easier than trying to make it up on the racetrack.
Now, the Eximbank Team China Porsche squad had a very difficult weekend last time out in Navarra. You may remember they won the championship race in Zolder, which was round 2 of the championship. And this was Mike Parisi and Matt Halliday we're talking about. They won the championship race, but then last time out in Zolder they didn't manage to pick up, last time out in Navarra they didn't manage to pick up a single point. Unfortunately for them, they had an 11th and a 12th. So from second in the championship coming into Navarra, they leave, they come into this weekend down in 6th place. So there is Matt Halliday, you can see getting suited and booted as well, ready to take the first stint of qualifying.
But I think Porsche are going to struggle here as well. It's the nature of this Slovakia ring racetrack. There are a number of quick corners on it, and there are a number of middle speed corners, and these are not doing any big favours for the 911.
Well, we saw Matt Halliday getting suited. Let's have a word with him now. He's down in the pit lane with Haley.
Matt, how are you feeling going into qualifying?
Yeah, it's all right. You know, it's not a great track for the Porsche like we talked about yesterday. It's very fast and flowing. Doesn't suit our car so well, but, you know, we improved a lot yesterday. Go so well in the last round, so, you know, we qualified well, had bad luck in the race, so do our best and see what happens.
Thank you.
So is the Porsche really suiting a kind of point and squirt kind of racetrack?
Certainly, I mean, if you look at Zolder, where they won they won, in fact, the championship race on the Sunday, the nature of Zolder is quite a different nature to that here in the Slovakia ring. And of course, weather factor played a role as well here. We're looking forward to having wonderful, clear, bright days. The ambient temperature right now is ideal, it's about 22.5 Celsius. Track temperature a little bit warmer. But in the latter part of the afternoon, when both events, the qualifying and the championship races, will take place, qualifying today, championship tomorrow, those higher temperatures are probably going to work against the Porsche. Just a combination of the nature of the racetrack and the ambient temperatures.
There is Benjamin Narish. He's in the number 8 car. His normal partner Rem Way is still recovering from complications after appendicitis, and so as a result he will be joined by Andreas Zuber, the Austrian driver. So it'll be Andreas Zuber partnering Benjamin Narish in the number 8 car. There we are then at Reiter Engineering. That's the 25 car, which will be started in this first qualifying session by Stefan Racina. Peter Koch's not here this weekend. He's been replaced in that 25 car by Stefan Racina, who has, well, he's a Slovakian, the only Slovakian in the field. He was very, very strong here last year in FIA GT3, put the car on pole position, romped away in the opening stint in his, I think he was in a Lamborghini actually, I think he was in one of the Leipzig Lamborghinis last year. So Racina in a Lamborghini around this circuit is going to be very, very strong, and he's going to be joined by Daryl O'Young in that car.
Well, having a national driver here at the Slovakia ring is going to be great for the local motorsport fans. It's another focus of attention here for television. And these two Lamborghini Gallardos were competitive in the 2 practice sessions yesterday. Thomas Enge and Albert von Thun and Taxis were third quickest in the first session. And then in the second session, it was Rosina and Daryl O'Young. I think it was Daryl O'Young who might have set the time. They were third quickest. So the Lamborghini looks as if it might actually be a car that is going to work here very well as the McLarens.
And how will the BMWs fare this weekend? That's going to be an interesting one to look out for. Hjalmar Berman and Michael Bartels in that 18 car. You can see Hjalmar Berman already sitting in the car. And they've had to do a lot of recovery drives this year, haven't they? Especially in Navarra, where they had the problem in the qualifying race, which meant they didn't get to the grid. Then in the championship race, they had an intermittent clutch problem, which sent them to the back. They're going to want to qualify at the front and run at the front.
Well, so far, from the two practice sessions we've seen here on Friday, the BMW looks to be in the middle of the pack. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be competitive. It just means from Friday running, that's where they are. Of course, going into qualifying, an entirely different opportunity. Again, it's the temperature of the racetrack. It'll be the ambient temperature, which can play a big, big part in how a car will affect its qualifying run. And do not dismiss these Z41 BMWs.
There is Matthias Lauda getting focused before he takes the number 17 car out for the first segment of qualifying. If you haven't seen GT1 qualifying before, it works in pretty much the same way as Formula 1. You have 3 segments of qualifying. The first segment we lose 3 cars, and well, it'll be less than that. It'll be just 1 car, I think, this weekend. And then the second section will decide who goes through to the top 8 shootout for the final segment of qualifying, and that will decide the grid for the qualifying race, which will then decide the grid for the championship race. Here's WRT. They have yet to finish on the podium since that dominating weekend in Nagara, where they took 2 1-2s, so they're going to be looking to get back on track as well.
Well, they've got a very strong driver lineup. They've got 2 fundamentally competitive cars, but again, like a number of teams, they're caught just behind the lead group of cars, which primarily are the 2 McLarens and certainly one of the 2 Lamborghinis. So in that group you've got the Ferrari 458, you've got the Audi R8, you've got the BMW Z4s. So it's a competitive midfield, and any one of those 3 or 4 teams could be the bunch that leads that group.
Well, there we saw the vital statistics for the Audi. 560 brake horsepower coming from that V10 Audi engine they've got under the hood there, and that is the 32 machine, which is Stefan Ortelli and Laurence Vanthor's car. They're still in 3rd position in the championship, only 4 points off the top of the standings, despite only taking 2 points finishes in the last 4 races. So they're still in with the hunt, even though that they haven't had the pace recently. In the free practice sessions, they didn't seem to be performing that strongly, but someone who did perform very strongly in the practice sessions was that Ford GT. That man there, Matteo Cressoni, looking on, he set the fastest lap time we've seen so far this weekend, 2 minutes 3.048 in that Ford GT. So they're definite contenders for a top qualifying position.
Yeah, I mean, from a team that got the car at the sort of 13th hour, they've made a lot of progress, they've worked very hard, and the car looked very competitive. Certainly its pace off the grid at the start of the qualifying race in Navarra on Saturday evening was revelationary, and I'm not sure whether it was illegal either, but anyway, he got away with it. But he got a massive run from the midfield up into turn 1. He actually had momentarily had the lead of the race, but maybe overcooked it a bit into turn 2 and dropped back. But consequently, the Ford GT is an ever-improving competitor, and let's keep an eye on that one, because that could be a surprise here this afternoon.
They, of course, are looking to get their season onto a bit of a, well, just to start it, really, because at the moment they're 5th in the championship. They were blighted early on by the weather. There's no doubt about that. They took pole position. There's Francesco Castellacci. You can see he'll be in the number 4 car. They took pole position, the sister car, the number 3 machine, in the first qualifying session of the season in Nogaro. Tony Verlander sticking the car on pole, but then wet weather sent them flying towards the back of the field as they struggled to get to grips with the changing conditions. Same thing happened in Zolder, and last time out in Novara, it was just a case of not really having the pace, unfortunately. So there's Enzo Eid. You can see one of the few GT1 drivers to race in spectacles, I think. I can't think of anyone else who does that.
Presently, I can't think of anybody. I mean, others have done it. I mean, Jacques Villeneuve, yeah. I think, used to race, certainly going back to my era. Such great race drivers as Maston Gregory. Now, Maston Gregory was the Kansas kid, and he was laconic, laid back, so laid back he was vertical, horizontal all the time. But a real character, and he was, he looked like you actually, but even when he was about 45, he looked like he was about 20. And just a great race driver, but a real true character of that period.
Well, I hope I don't look 45, John, so...
Not at the minute, not at the minute, maybe later today.
Philippe Zalaquada and Tony Verlander in that number 3 car. There are our championship leaders. That 37 machine of Thomas Jaeger and Nicky Pastorelli are actually topping the championship standings, and that Alinkel.com Munich Motorsports team are topping the team's championship as well. Despite not picking up a win so far this season, they've been consistently decent, I think it's fair to say, in every session so far, and as a result they are topping the team's championship. And there you can see Thomas Jaeger preparing to get going in his car, the 35-year-old from Munich. Plenty of experience for Thomas Jaeger, and he will be joined in the sister car by Markus Winkelhock. You can see just folding himself into that Mercedes. Winkelhock, of course, shot to prominence in the 2007 German Grand Prix, or it may have been European Grand Prix actually, when he led the race in a spiker, didn't he, when the rain came down.
Yeah,
and you can see the vital statistics of the Mercedes, one of the heaviest cars out there on the circuit, producing about 500 brake horsepower, 600 newton meters of torque, one of the longest cars as well, at 4.7 meters long. It's a real kind of beast of a car, isn't it?
Well, it's an incredibly engineered car. It's what you would expect from Mercedes-Benz. You know, this form, this SLS, but SLS in the case of this car. But going back to the early 50s, when Mercedes won Le Mans with an SL, a 300 SL, you can almost see the direct lineage from that period right up to the present day.
Yeah, it's a very iconic brand that Mercedes have built, and we've got plenty of iconic brands down here, and the boss of this iconic brand, or this team anyway, is Mark Basseng. He's with Haley.
Oh no.
Big boss,
yeah.
Mark, you're now currently leading the team's championship. How are you feeling going into qualifying?
It looks good. We had a good practice with the 38, and the 37 was not so good, but it was on different setups. So we copy now the setup to the 37, so I hope that we are with both cars under the first 5, and then we will see.
Thank you.
Top 5 then? Fairly looking forward to this weekend. They always seem to come into this week into the weekends disappointed, and they do free practice 1 and it never quite works out, but they've got such strength in that team they can get forward.
Yes, they have, and I mean, one of the things the team will do is go down 2 different directions with each car. So whichever one is the better package of the 2, then they'll revert the second car to that package, and that's what Mark Basseng was explaining. So, I mean, if you think back to Novara, and a part of the circuit, turn 2 and turn 3, they looked like they were really struggling in practice to get those cars to give the confidence. And that was what it was all about, driver confidence. But they got it right for the race. Took them a little bit of time. And again, Mark alluding to the 38 car, second quickest in the second free practice session yesterday afternoon. So the 37 car will be adjusted to the 38 car setup, and hopefully they'll see those 2 Mercedes, you know, up the right end of the qualifying. We're about to see go.
So you can see the clock there ticks over to 9:15 local time, and this qualifying session gets underway. First of all, we have a 20-minute session to decide the top 14 cars to progress into the second section, which will be 15 minutes long. Then that will decide who will be the top 8 to go into the final 10-minute shootout. All the cars heading out then onto the circuit. Very wide start-finish straight here at the Slovakia ring, and we'll kind of try and take you around. So this is turn 1, a fairly quick corner. There's none of the kind of slow, tight stuff we've seen at places like Nogaro and also a bit Navarra. It's very, very smooth and flowing.
Yes, it is in some ways. I mean, looking at the circuit map, it looks like a lot of modern circuits, but what they've managed to incorporate is a little bit of rise and fall on the racetrack, and not all the corners are easily seen through. And in particular, coming up into turn 2, which is a long right-hand corner, and will be building up speed on the exit, and it is therefore just on the exit of the turn 2 that the chicane that we have introduced here for this event, prior to what I would call the Flugplatz, or the flight place, as they would say in German, it's been deemed inappropriate to use that bridge, the flyover, without some mechanism to slow the cars down for safety reasons. There you get an indication. That's not out on the exit of turn 2, but it gives you an indication of the rise and fall. These are all fundamentally access tunnels that enable safety workers and crews to get to the different parts of the racetrack because of its interlooping nature.
Yes, indeed. So it's worth pointing out that the jump we're talking about, you should probably go on YouTube actually, there's some great footage of FIA GT3 from last year. The fronts were actually taking off, and in order to avoid that kind of dangerous situation, if you get air under the car, that kind of thing, they've decided to slow that section of the circuit down.
Jack, I hate to be reflective, but in the good old days,
here we go.
In the good old days of the Nürburgring or wherever it was, if you didn't have at least a foot of air under your car, under the Flugplatz or under Flansgarten, you know, further around the racetrack, you weren't at the races. You think of all those iconic photographs of Hans Stuck Jr. in touring cars or in sports cars or whatever. Stefan Belov in a 956 Porsche Flansgarten. That thing nearly sort of was challenging the shuttle at one stage. He got so much air. So he did eventually have a massive shunt as a consequence.
So there is the 24 car we are watching, and that is being started by Thomas Enger. There is the chicane, then you can see it's pretty quick. I mean, we've seen temporary chicanes like that put in before in places like Barcelona in the mid-90s in Formula 1, and they tend to be very tight, very clumsy, but it's a real flick.
That's got a good rhythm. I mean, no doubt at some point somebody might clip it, trying to shave those millions or thousands of seconds off a lap time, and that will then, let's say, cause a little bit of consternation. But they could have gone the route of, as a real bus stop chicane, stand on the brakes, slow right, back left, so they've given a little bit of breathing space in that chicane. The only thing is on the exit of turn 2 up to the chicane, there will be a no overtaking zone. But in fact, from the exit of turn 2 to the chicane is only about 150 metres anyway, and it would be very unusual to see a car in close proximity, because the aero effect will stop it doing it. So it's not going to have any bearing on any racing at that point of the track.
Okay, so we were on board a moment ago with Thomas Enger, but he's now just coming out of turn 12. Then he comes over the rise, parallel with the pit straight. Here we go, on board, down into turn 13, which is a very, very long right-hander. This is possibly one of the areas you might be able to get alongside your rival. And this is the corner that just keeps going right, and then finally gets on the power. There's the pit lane entrance, and us just on the left-hand side through the kink, and across the start-finish straight.
There'll be a bit of gamesmanship that's going to come into play there during both events when drivers will be making their mandatory pit stops, because it will allow you to make a very high-speed departure off the racetrack into the pit lane, and it could cause a bit of confusion for anybody who's close to you.
So this Ferrari that we're seeing just had a little bit of an off. You can see a bit of grass in the front bumper there as he turns into the right-hander. That is Enzo Eid. So those spectacles not working out quite as well as he would have wanted so far. A little point just for clarification on the chicane. There will be yellow flags there in the race, but there are no yellow flags for this qualifying session. Here's down into turn 2. Pretty quick right-hander as well. Another long corner, putting a lot of load on the front left tyre, and now Enzo is going to throw it through this left-right, and They need to be careful with that grass on the exit as well.
Yes, and there was that area of the chicane, he overran it, and he had to take the emergency exit through the grass, and that's why he needed to get into the pits, I think, pretty quickly, because these cars run pretty hot under normal circumstances, and with your radiator blocked, as you can see there, the green where it would normally be a matte black grille and the air intakes on that 458 Ferrari, he needs to get into the pits, get that cleared out. You don't want to overheat your engine.
So Thomas Enger has come out of the pits and gone straight on it. He's done a 2-minute 3.156, which is the second quickest lap time we've seen all weekend, and he's just gone purple in Sector 1. So the man from the Czech Republic, not Slovakia, is certainly on form. 2-minute 3.156 for him. You can see one of the BMWs kicking up a lot of dust on the exit of the corner. That is going to be Matthias Lauda, I think, as Enzo Eid winds through this sequence of corners towards the bottom end of the circuit. Turns 10, 11, then the left-hand kink at 12, and we've got off into the gravel trap. Benjamin Lariche in the number 8 X-Bank Team China Porsche. And, well, we were looking for one car to be eliminated in this qualifying session. I fear it might be that one.
Well, I don't know about it being eliminated, but it ain't going to get back on the track, because that's going to take outside assistance. The car is well and truly beached, well off the racetrack, but no indication that there's any services there available to tow that car. There we see it. And, well, I've seen more difficult gravel to get out of, but, as I say, the car is beached, and that's over for the number 8 Lariche Porsche.
Yep, and he just tried to rev it and get it out, but it didn't quite work. Thomas Enger has now gone through to do a 2-minute 2.599. So that Lamborghini is looking massively strong this weekend. Now we're watching Stefan Racina, his teammate. He's in the Blancpain sponsored car. Both are backed by Blancpain, but one has more prominent Blancpain branding on it, and he's coming down into the right. Oh, there you can see, clearing out the grass.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the team would have seen it, and they would have radioed to get in as quickly as possible and come in at a relatively slow pace. The lead Lamborghini, the Thomas Enger car, that car is the one we're in fact watching now, or not 25, but it is its quickest lap. That 2 minutes 02.5 is the quickest lap so far of the weekend. Again, cooler conditions, more overcast sky, just helping the teams and drivers.
Out comes the Ferrari just in front of the 32 car of Stefano Telli. And so let's have a little look at the order. It's first and second at the moment for the Lamborghinis. Then in third position is the 37 Mercedes of Thomas Jaeger. Then it's the 17 BMW of Matthias Lauda. Stefano Telli in fifth place. Benjamin Lariche was in sixth position, so he has set a lap time. So if someone else fails to set a lap time, he might be able to get away with that, Benjamin Lariche, but he won't be able to go out for the second segment of qualifying if the car's beached in the gravel as well. So we'll have a look at that later on. Then behind Lariche we've got Gregoire de Moustier in the first of the McLaren. Still a couple of cars yet to go out. Fred Makavicki, Philippe Salaquada, Milos Pavlovic and Marcus Winkelhock yet to leave, as we are going through this long right-hander that brings us back up towards turn 6. And there you can see Benjamin Lariche's Porsche has been removed.
And it's also in gear because the rear wheels are dragging, so Stop the Car wasn't able to select neutral, surprise, and is being dragged with it in gear, not necessarily an ideal circumstance.
So Stefano Telli then through the sweeping left-hander of turn 9, then up the hill over one of the access tunnels. He's up behind the Porsche of Matt Halliday, and I would suggest Matt Halliday is holding him up just a little bit, but Halliday has every right to be there because he's doing his own fast lap. There's no need for him to let Ortelli through if he doesn't want to. Parisi and Halliday really struggling in practice. They were 15th quickest in free practice 1 and 10th quickest in free practice 2. So as we alluded to before the qualifying session got underway, Porsche's really struggling. Ortelli's backed off.
He's had to back off because straight line speed of the Porsche clearly more than a match for the Audi. The Audi was the quicker car through the corners as we look at the McLaren MP412 as they make their way down the pit lane. Interestingly, again, the pit lane exit, you must not transgress over that white line. That'll be a penalty. But it's right on the racing line into turn 1. As you see, the second of those two Porsches, the Mike Parisi car, just coming across to make that line. So it's, again, something for teams and drivers to be fully aware of. A car leaving the pit lane will be in full throttle, must stay to the left of the track. Nevertheless, it'll interfere with somebody's lap.
So there's Thomas Jaeger third place currently, a 2-minute 3.646, which is comfortably quicker than he's been so far this weekend by some 2 seconds. So they've really, that setup change has helped them a lot.
And that's 0.3 of a second quicker than we saw from the Marcus Winkelhock, Mark Besseng car. As the Porsche now, I don't know if it's running under some steam or it's still being towed back by that vehicle, but let's look at the Mercedes.
There is Marcus Winkelhock. He has yet to set a lap time, a representative lap time anyway. A 2-minute 10.184 is his lap time so far. He's done a personal best in Sector 1, about a second off Thomas Enger's. 1.3 seconds off Thomas Enger's best Sector 1. So this isn't particularly going to be a strong lap as Marcus Winkelhock just settles himself down to try and get into the top 14. That's what it's all about, as one of the Mercedes growls past our commentary box window, but down into the right-hander at turn 3 comes Marcus Winkelhock. Again, long corners at this Slovakia ring. It's not a case of hitting one apex and getting back on the throttle. This is actually towards the end of the circuit, isn't it? That's the hairpin down at turn 13. He comes across the line. It's going to be a 2-minute 3.7, 1.1 seconds off the pace. So actually, middle sector and final sector looked all right there, didn't it, for the Mercedes?
But interestingly, there's a 1/10 of a second between the sister cars, the 37 of Jaeger and Pastorelli, and this car, Winkelhock, we've just seen, back to Stefano Otelli in the Audi R8 V10.
And we go on board with Stefano Otelli, working at the wheel pretty hard, and we go through the left-hand kink at turn 14 and across the start-finish straight. It's a 2-minute 3.2 for Otelli, but let's have a look at this Slovakia ring circuit then as we go down into the first corner. And there you can see the team at Audi watching on. They're going to be fairly satisfied with that. 2-minute 3.2 puts Otelli third.
Yeah, it does indeed. It gets it ahead of the two Mercedes. It brings them within, well, 0.7 of a second of the fastest time, still held by Thomas Enger. And then the second of the Lamborghinis, they are within a 1/10 of a second. So they're in challenging position provisionally for the front row of the grid of this part of the three-part qualifying that we're going to see.
And of course it will be these drivers that take to the track for the final pole position shootout. That Ferrari sounds good, doesn't it? As it comes past the camera position. But yeah, these will be the drivers that are taking to the track for the final qualifying shootout. Frank Stippler has just jumped up into second position, a 2-minute 3.105. So the Audi's looking strong. We've got Lamborghini, Audi, Mercedes at the moment in the top 6 positions. Felipe Salaquada comes across the line to jump up into 5th place in the Ferrari 458 Italia. So Ferrari's looking like they may have a bit of pace as well. This is going to be close, isn't it?
Yes, just under 7 minutes of this session remaining, and all of a sudden cars that maybe 5 minutes ago hadn't done a representative lap are now getting those laps in. Still the Lamborghini quickest, but it's the Mercedes, and then the...
Yep, and then it's the BMW of Lauda, but Steph Dusseldorp is looking concerned, and I wonder why, because Fred Makovicky is yet to set a lap time. He's gone out, we saw him leave the pits, he's gone through Sector 1. Now, I don't know if it is a long Sector 2 here. It's about a minute. Oh, there we go. That's all right then. He's getting a bit concerned for a moment. But Fred Makovicky is out there, and he's on a 40.0 Sector 1. This is his first hot lap, so this isn't really going to be particularly competitive. Yama Berman's just done the quickest middle sector of anyone, a 58.3.
Yeah, no, that's a quick
Very quick.
So here we go with Fred Makovicky in the McLaren personal best, naturally, because he hasn't done a representative time. So let's have a look and see about this car, which ought to be absolutely perfectly suited. The aerodynamics of the car, the whole concept of this car is very much that of a race car, which is a GT, in effect, road car, but very sophisticated car.
He sticks it 7th on his first hot lap, a 2-minute 3.423. That was not a bad effort at all. And in fact, if we look from 2nd down to 8th position, we've only got half a second covering the cars. As we look at one of the fire marshals, I presume, watching on down the start-finish straight. There is Yama Berman then, purple in Sector 2, and that put him up into 2nd place overall. The second car to dip into the 2-minute 9s, 2-minute 2s, 2-minute 2.901 for Yama Berman. Only a couple of tenths off the quickest time of the session so far. Unfortunately for Benjamin Lariche, he is now the slowest car out there, so it will be he that is eliminated from this first segment of qualifying, I fear, unless he can perform some miracle and get the Porsche back out there. But although he's been recovered, so he wouldn't be allowed to anyway. So it's going to be Benjamin Arish.
And runs a little bit wide on this particular lap. So Ella's decided to report the lap, or whether he's going to now. Well, I think he's going to report that lap because he lost time. But nevertheless, good effort by the BMW. The 4GT of Pavlovic and Cressoni, that actually was quickest overall in the second free practice yesterday afternoon on a 2.30.48. Still waiting to see us. Pavlovic in the car right now on a 2.5.188. So Cressoni might be the one that's going to get the job done when he gets into it for the next qualifying segment.
Yeah, I wonder if Pavlovic he's done the least laps of anyone in this session. He's done 3, so he's literally gone around the track and then come back into the pits again. So he has set a lap time, not a very representative one, but it will be enough to get him through to the second section of qualifying. So I wonder if they're being a bit cunning down there at Sunred with tyres or something like that. You can see Jelmer Berman has backed off in that middle sector and has now come into the pits. And so it's there you can see the number 9 Porsche being pulled back in. How are they faring? 11th place for Matt Halliday, 2-minute 4.2, so they're still struggling. Sorry, that is the number 8 Porsche that's now been returned to the pits, covered in gravel. And we've got a bit of a shredded tyre there. That's in the AF Corsa Ferrari garage, so that's a bit of an interesting one, isn't it?
Well, I mean, very often what happens is a car will pick up something around the racetrack, a flint or maybe running a curb, get a deflation rather than a puncture, and the tyre pressure drops, but the heat builds up. So you get an effect, an artificial form of pressure. Ultimately, the heat gets to the point where it can't be contained and it explodes, and that most likely is the cause of that tyre.
So Stefano Telli is the only man still out there on the circuit. Everyone else has called it a day for this first segment of qualifying. Telli has done a 2-minute 3.123, and he's gone 39.8 in sector 1, so I think this is a back off and cruise into the pits for Stefan. There is the number 9 Porsche of Matt Halliday down in 11th position. So at the moment, the only real surprise is pace-wise. Well, I don't know if you can call it a surprise because the Porsches have been struggling yesterday as well, but Matt Halliday down in 11th place and Milos Pavlovic in 12th. Gregoire de Moustier 13th in his McLaren, a 2-minute 5.77. Only did 4 laps, so only 2 hot laps for de Moustier. But we saw that number 2 Hexus McLaren go quickest in free practice 1 in the hands of Alvaro Parent. So expect to see a little bit more pace perhaps in the second segment of qualifying.
There's no doubt Alvaro Parent is the driver, the McLaren driver, the nominated McLaren driver, been under contract for over a year, been responsible for a lot of the development work that's gone into this MP412C, and as I mentioned earlier, extremely highly regarded by the folk back at Woking.
Well, yeah, he's a very quick driver, is Alvaro Parent. Very strong single-seater record, picked up 2 wins in GP2 over the past couple of seasons. Race winner in Super League Formula as well, was the 2005 British Formula 3 champion, so he's got plenty of experience in there. Let's see what Thomas Enger is saying.
Yeah, first, second lap, both laps. But I think I will try to do it for the second flying lap to concentrate.
So he's saying the second flying lap, that's quite interesting actually, is the one where the pace is going to come from in the tyres, if I've understood Thomas's chat with his engineer there correctly. So that's an interesting one. He's saying to Albert, go for the first lap, go for the second lap, but it's going to be the second lap where the pace comes in, where these Pirelli tyres, new to the championship for this season, are up to their optimum working temperature.
Yeah, I mean, a tyre for an endurance series is a different tyre that's used for, sprints in single-seater racing. So to get the best out of the tyre, clearly when it's new it's going to give you your best, but it's all about the heat cycle and the cycles the tyre goes through before it reaches best performance. So Thomas is indicating that it's the second flying lap. Do a hard lap on your first flying lap, but it'll be more than likely the second one where you will get your best time.
Here's a little interesting fact. The theoretical best from that first segment of qualifying was a 2-minute 1.592. So the theoretical best is a second quicker than our actual best, and that shows how the different cars are quickest around different parts of the circuit. Lamborghini was quickest in Sector 1 with Thomas Enger. BMW quickest in Sector 2 with Jelmer Berman. Hello, Nicky. It's looking a bit scary, isn't it? And then the Ferrari of Felipe Salaquada was quickest in the third sector. So, as we often see in GT racing, this is an excellent example of different cars being stronger at different points.
And also, it gets away from one manufacturer domination, which is something that this series is all about. And as we look at Albert Monton in Texas getting himself prepared, the radio earphones going in, and then balaclava, mandatory, helmet and the hands device, all of part, which is mandatory these days. Gone are the days where the gritted teeth and the goggles and the open face helmet. The good old days.
So Albert getting ready to take that number 24 car onto the circuit, which was the quickest in that first segment of qualifying. Now the checkered flag has come out. Let's have a look at how it finished. 0.3 of a second ahead of the BMW Z4 of Jelmer Berman was Thomas Enger. Then we had the Audis in third and fourth place. That's going to please the team, the WR team, because they've, as we said earlier, struggled a little bit this season. You can see Stefan Rosina then in fifth position, half a second off his teammate Thomas Enger, but Rosina didn't do that many laps either. Marcus Winkelhock and Mark Basseng in sixth place. They're hoping for a top 5 in qualifying, so they're not too far away from achieving that. Fred Makavicki and Steph Dusseldorf going out pretty late in the session, did Fred, and as a result finished in 7th place. And then we can see the 15th place Porsche 911 Exim Bank Team China car of Benjamin Lariche ended its session pretty early in the gravel trap, and as a result they will be eliminated. So we will have a 15-minute session for the next 14 cars, and the top 8 will go through to the pole position shootout, and behind them those grid positions will be decided as Mike Parisi hops into the car. A few shots of the crowd at this Slovakia ring. I think FIA GT3 was one of the first major series to come here last year. It's been followed by World Touring cars came here earlier this season as well, so it's starting to get itself a bit of a reputation, and it deserves that reputation.
Absolutely.
Because the track itself is pretty good.
I think it's a very good effort. I think the Slovakian authorities have produced a super racetrack, and hopefully we're going to see exciting motor racing. It is demanding in certain parts, it's tricky in other bits, so the drivers and the engineers have to work to get the best both out of the car but out of the driver.
There you can see Frank Stippler is Oliver Jarvis is going to be driving that 33 car. Frank Stippler piloted it to a top 3 position in that first segment of qualifying. Oliver Jarvis getting ready, getting in the zone for this 15-minute session, which will start in a smidgen under 5 minutes time. And Oliver Jarvis, who has had some decent battles so far this year, but he hasn't really, he was battling for the lead in Nogaro, but he got taken out by his teammate, didn't he, in Zolder a couple of weeks ago, so it's going to be difficult for them. This is a car to watch though. Alvaro Parent, as we've said, McLaren test driver, debuted the McLaren last year in Blancpain. He was driving it along with Oliver Gavin, I think it was, at Silverstone towards the end of last season. But the Portuguese driver really knows his way around this car.
Yes, he does. And I mean, as I mentioned, very highly regarded by McLaren because he is a professional driver. I mean, being a professional driver isn't just simply about being a quick driver. It's about the way you go about your business. There's another very professional driver, Stefano Telli. It's not by chance that he gets good drives and good teams. It's because he is an outstanding driver. He understands his responsibility and the role with which he plays it in the team.
And the number 1 car will now be taken over by Steph Dusseldorp, a younger figure at only 22 years old, but he's still got plenty of single-seater experience behind him. Came second in the German Formula 3 Cup in 2009. Also competed in Formula Renault, that kind of thing, in his formative years. And then obviously won the GT1 Championship last year, the Teams Championship anyway, along with Hexis Racing. So it's not much room for him in that car. He's a tall lad, isn't he?
He is tall lad, but even Fred Makavicki, I mean, we have an onboard camera on that car, and just looking at the driver's seating position, it has been also, in the words of the chairman of the McLaren Group companies, optimized. Because, believe me, you have to live with all this stuff. But the idea is to get the driver's mass basically in one position rather than spread out. And Steph Dusseldorp is a big lad, so, you know, a 6'2", 6'3" driver, long limbs. If you can compact all that into one central space, then it enables you to do your weight distribution, all the other important details to your best advantage.
Let's hear from the man who has to squeeze Steph Dusseldorp into that slot, Philippe Dumas.
Philippe, it would seem it would be quite tight for Steph and the McLaren.
I don't know. You know, at XC since 2 years, the qualification is not our game. But no, I think we have a good chance to put 2 cars in Q3, and we'll see this afternoon. But it's on a good way for sure.
Thank you.
So Philippe Dumas, always very calm, very collated, very measured in everything that he responds with.
But also, when he's asked a direct question, as Haley Coxon just did, he gives a single word answer and then talks about something else.
Yeah.
You know, the purpose of the driver position is to have control of the car. But because drivers vary in height, and there's a difference between Fred Makovic and Steph Dusseldorp, so they try to, as I mentioned, maximize the driver compartment, the space the driver takes up. And I noticed that when you see the onboard shots, hopefully we'll get some from that car, you'll notice that the driver's knees are quite close to his main body, as opposed to being stretched out as you'd have in your normal, squidgemobile driving around the roads of Slovakia.
Indeed. So there's Matteo Cressoni. He's going to be taking over in that Ford GT, set the quickest time, well, it was of the weekend so far until that first qualifying session, the quickest time of yesterday. Matt Halliday looking fairly pensive as Mike Parisi is going to take over that number 9 Porsche, but Halliday is really enjoying, I think, his time in GT1, the New Zealander who I think lives in LA. He does a lot of flying, does Matt Halliday. If you follow him on Twitter, all he's doing is flying.
Well, I mean, if you're a New Zealander, in fact, LA is not a bad base because
I guess it's halfway.
It's midway between New Zealand, and it's one of the routes that people, it's their preferred route sometimes to get to New Zealand. And there's a lot going on, a lot of motorsport in that part of California, a lot of other opportunities, commercial business opportunities. The big difference, of course, is you've got that massive 8-hour or 9-hour time change every time you fly eastward from LA into Europe, and that does take a bit of getting used to. And that seems to deal with it pretty well. He loves the lifestyle out there, got lots of things to do in terms of training, fitness, the opportunities in California. Just all you have to do is watch some of those programs, those fitness programs in California. I tell you what, wouldn't be hard to live out there.
But here we are just outside of Bratislava for the second segment of qualifying. It's going to be 15 minutes long, and this will be one of the closest ones of the day so far, really, because we're going to have 8 of the 14 drivers go through to the next qualifying session. So the top 8 will go through to the pole position shootout. Here you can see the little chicane. It's been put there with its Blancpain and its Hexis branding. Over the hill they come, and then down into this right-hander of turn 3. Nice little jib camera we've got going on down there. Good stuff, and they exit through turn 3, left-hand kink at 4, and then through this right-hander at 5, which then immediately pretty much leads into the long right-hander at turn 6. Out of the pits comes the Ford GT. So Matteo Cressoni will be, as we've said, one to watch, as will be Alvaro Parent. We could just see heading out. There's Enzo Eid standing on the pit wall, so it's all very busy in the pit lane. 13.5 minutes to go. Not sure who's out first on track and who's going to be the first person to give our representative lap times, but we may well see a few dips into the 2-minute 2s here. As the Mercedes come through the kind of hairpin towards the end of the circuit, towards the mid part of the circuit really, at turn 10. I say a hairpin, it's a hairpin in direction change, but not really in the tightness of a hairpin that we'd associate with the kind of like La Source at Spa-Francorchamps or something like that. And down then into turn 13, it's the 2 Mercedes that are weaving around to get heat into their tyres. Marc Basseng out in front at the head of the field, and he's going to be the first man through to set a flying lap time, although he hasn't of course started it yet. Here we go then, second segment of qualifying about to properly get underway. Marc Basseng roars across the line in his Mercedes SLS, followed by his teammate. These two picked up second and third place in Navarra, despite coming into the weekend not thinking it was going to be a particularly strong one for them. These two definitely aiming to get into that top 8 and then subsequently the top 5. That's their goal for the weekend.
Well, certainly running on the exit out of turn 1, up the hill into turn 2. As we get an idea of the exit, this is a quick exit out of turn 2, and then you can see the chicane being installed there, hard on the brakes. But fortunately, it's not one of those bus stop it on the nose. Carries momentum through there, and then down into what is turn 3. There's a long right-hand corner. Probably not going to see a lot of opportunities to outbrake anybody because the speeds have been affected by the chicane prior to the flood plats, or the bit of the racetrack where cars would have been becoming airborne.
Even in the World Touring cars, about a month ago I was reading that even though they lap some 10 to 15 to 20 seconds slower than these GT1 cars, they still were experiencing the effects of that little rise. So it really is a dramatic drop. And there you can see a 40.3 in Sector 1. Not a bad time for Marc Basseng on a first flying lap, but Albert von Turnen Taxis actually has done a 39.7 in that first sector, so that's not a bad effort at all from Albert.
Well, he's obviously listened to the advice from Thomas Enger, who explained to him that your first flying lap will be a good lap, but it should be your second. Well, Albert certainly delivered in that first sector with a 39.7 as you mentioned, but it's now the Mercedes indicating that they've got, well, I don't know quite what that relates to, those two.
No, because that'll just be full stop, won't it? The best middle sector so far in this second segment of qualifying, so it's not going to be a massively representative time from Marc Basseng. Probably somewhere in the 2-minute 4s, I would hazard a guess. Maybe a 3 if he gets lucky, but out across the finish line he comes, and it's a 2-minute 3.9. So a decent lap time from Marc, but nothing astonishing. Laurens Vanthoor has gone straight on it. He's in a 2-minute 3.224, so that's a good effort from him as we go on board. Now we do, down into the first corner. This is, I think, with Albert von Turnen Taxis. And there's his teammate Thomas Enger watching on. Von Turnen Taxis does a 2-minute 3.5. So they're coming straight out of the blocks here, these guys, but we're expecting these second lap times to be marginally quicker if Thomas Enger's information is correct.
Well, Thomas, all that experience, all that knowledge, it's probably pretty accurate. As we go back to Cressoni in the 4 GT through turns 10, and that's a very tight left-hander, then the more open turn 11, and then finally out through 12, which is just a flat-out curve. Again, drops down the hill, and the run up to turn, this would be the penultimate turn 13. In fact, 13 and 14 are really just an extension of one another.
Mike Parisi has just jumped
body work.
Oh yeah,
body work on the
that
track.
Might be Ford-based, I would predict, but can't really see it. But Mike Parisi has jumped to the top of the timing screens. He's in a 2-minute 3.0. So whilst that may not keep him in provisional, at the top of this segment of qualifying, that's 1.8 seconds quicker than the Porsche has been all weekend. So Mike Parisi has come out of the blocks and absolutely hooked it up. And now Stef Dusseldorp, though, has just set the fastest time in Sector 1. There's Milos Pavlovic, the Serbian, watching on. And Alvaro Perem, we said he was one to watch. He's now top of the timing screens. 2-minute 2.769. Marc Basseng has done the quickest middle sector of anyone. This is going to be a fun session, I think. Maybe not even as fun as the pole position shootout, but
to get into the top 8 is going to be tight.
Yeah, it really, really is. There you can see the two Audis swapping positions a little bit. Nicky Meyer-Melnhoff in the 17 V1 racing car BMW. He has backed off, I think, and is coming into the pits. So, strange decision from Nicky, but maybe he's the one with no rear bodywork. We still need to find
there was
a car out there with no bodywork.
We saw certainly on Hjalmar Berman on the BMW pit wall looking a bit concerned, maybe indicating that was bodywork from the rear of that BMW. As we see, which one is that? The 2?
That's the number 2.
Yeah,
sorry, that's 1. That's Stef Dusseldorp. So he's gone purple in Sector 1, decent in Sector 2, but then comes into the pits, because we've got the red flag. The red flags have come out here at the Slovakia ring, presumably for someone to leg it on and pick up that bodywork.
Yeah, it is on the exit of turn 2, and there's also a bit of rubbish. You can see there, that little thing just driven over by. Well, nice one. There's quite a lot of bodywork shards on the exit of turn 2. Carbon fibre is an absolute no-no on the racetrack for tyres.
We're trying to make out exactly which car that bodywork is from. Let's have a look at the back of the 17 car. Does it have its rear splitter? Yes, it does. So we can tick that one off the list. It's like Cluedo, this. And so there will and clean track at turn 1 apparently, so perhaps someone's run a little bit wide at turn 1. That could be the reason actually. Someone's run wide at turn 1, gone through the gravel, perhaps pulled gravel onto the circuit. Still can't make out exactly what that is. We need Jessica Fletcher here to come and help us out with this little investigation. I'm still going to guess Ford. We'll wait and see.
That would be an assumption based on there's a bit of white on the bodywork.
Yeah.
But that's a bit of bodywork, probably, yeah, well.
Oh, or is it Lamborghini?
It's Lamborghini. I would say that was Dido's Lamborghini.
So it looks like the front. No, rear splitter from a Lamborghini perhaps. So, well, that has now been removed, which is good news.
And that's about £10,000 worth of bodywork he's got in his hand.
Really? Put it on eBay.
But if you go to your local Lambo dealer and get a quote.
Is this the one? I can see the rear of this 25
Young
car.
It is Darrell Young indeed. So he's been off track and it's just caught in the gravel, caught on the edge of the track and just ripped it off.
Yes, indeed. So we saw the rear end of the 24 car coming off last race after a bit of contact.
I've seen the back of that Lamborghini in that configuration.
It looks quite cool.
Yeah. I wonder it might actually be quicker.
Yeah.
So no, it's interesting. Never ever assume when you've had a problem not to go and, because you might come in and say, strangely, the understeer that I had gone.
Yeah.
There is a correctly bodied Lamborghini. That's the sister car, and Albert von Turner, Texas.
And it was that car that lost its rear end in Navarra after an opening lap collision. So Lamborghini getting through those rear bumpers. 8 minutes and 8 seconds remaining on the clock in this second segment of qualifying. The session will restart at 9:54, which is in some 3 minutes' time. Well, 2.5 minutes' time if we want to be picky about it. But they fly into the pits. Let's see as we go into the pit lane. I wonder if they're going to change it and stick a new one on. It's probably a bit too... Well, they're going to stick some new tyres on, that's for sure, for Darrell Young. But it looks like they're going to leave that bodywork off at the back. It's quite cool, actually, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if I was another team and that car suddenly leaps up to being quickest of the session, I would query its right to do so, because it's running in what I would describe as a non-homologated form.
That's very true.
But that's what team managers are there for. Because if they're, I was being a bit, clever and smart by saying, run the car in that configuration. Is it actually slower or is it quicker? Because sometimes, and it happens, that in circumstances like this, now they're checking around the floor to make sure that the floor itself hasn't been damaged, which appears not to be the case. Nevertheless, the teams will be keeping an eye on that car to make sure that it doesn't suddenly find a 2.5 seconds a lap, simply because they've got a revised rear aero package in the car that hasn't been homologated.
Yep, Darrell Young in that car. He and Peter Cox have been sharing the car so far this season. As we've said before, Peter Cox not here, so Stefan Racina will be taking over. And, well, I wonder if they've got a rear bumper somewhere in the Reiter truck. They've got plenty of tyres laid out, ready to go. And then we go through the back end of the garage, and we'll see the guys working on the car out the front there. Darrell Young and Peter Cox have had decent pace this season, but it just hasn't quite worked out for them. They're yet to have, they picked up a 4th place in the first race in Navarra, but since then it's been a bit of a struggle for Darrell Young. His new teammate this weekend is Stefan Racina. Let's hear from him. He's down with Haley.
Stefan, do you know whether it's going to be legal for you to go back out with the car in the condition that it's in?
I'm not sure. I hope so. It should be legal. I mean, this is an unfortunate event, so it's not something done on purpose, and I hope we can still stay in top 8.
Do you have a spare?
Sure, I think so. Basically, it's my first GT1 for this team, so I hope. Difficult to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, his first GT1 race. He probably doesn't have a full inventory of Reiter engines.
But there's a Lamborghini dealer down in Bratislava, 50 kilometres down the road. In fact, we went past a used car parts supplier, and you never know what he might have a rear body panel. Look at the jostling. Look at that, a bit of aggression as the cars with 8 minutes of the session remaining, and track has now gone green as they make their way down the pit lane, and the Lamborghini's going out on a set of sticker tyres. So obviously everybody is comfortable with that scenario. So let's keep an eye and see what that car driven by Darrell Young, currently 6th quickest. Yes, 6th quickest on a 1:2:03.1.
Yep, Darrell Young set the 3rd quickest time yesterday, so he was feeling pretty confident coming into this weekend. The twice Porsche Carrera Cup Asia champion in 2006 and 2008. Did a bit of Porsche Super Cup as well. Runner-up in the Macau GT race in 2009. So plenty of GT experience for the Canadian-born Chinese driver. And he heads out onto the circuit, minus a rear bumper, but with new fresh tyres on. And I imagine most of the... I think there's going to be no one that's safe through to the top 8, I think, out of these 14 cars. Maybe the McLarens will feel a bit safe with a 2-minute 2.7, but everyone else, I think, is up for grabs in that top 8. And that's something you never really want to see around a McLaren, because it's you always assume the worst, don't you? So they're having a little look at Alvaro Parent's car. He is the only man who hasn't gone back out onto the circuit, so hope if there is a story there, hopefully we'll bring it to you.
Well, that car currently is in this group quickest of all, so on the 2 minutes 2.7. So they may think, do we need to go out? Keep an eye on it. I mean, that's who's going to challenge it. The nearest right now would be Mike Parisi, who is just under 0.3 of a second away, and down to 8th place in a 2:03.5. So there's what, 0.9 of a second between first and 8th place.
Yep.
It's not that comfortable, actually.
No, it's not. So we'll see whether Parent can get back out onto the circuit. They've sent out Steph Dusseldorp again, who's currently down in 11th, but he did a personal best. Well, he did a best of any Sector 1, personal best Sector 2, and then the red flags came out, so he had to dive into the pit lane. Across the line comes Mark Basseng. He's the first man out there then, as he was when the session went underway first time out. Did a 2-minute 3.503 before the session was red flagged. We've only got 5.5 minutes to go, and it's a 2-minute lap, so maybe only 2-3 more hot laps to go.
They're going to get one flying lap for sure, and if they're out early, that's why we had that mass charge out of the pit lanes, because people realise that the time it takes to do an out lap and to get the two optimum, particularly the second of those flying laps in, is the reason why they were pushing.
So this number 2 McLaren of Alvaro Parent apparently has stayed in to save tyres, so they think they're safe through.
Well, you know, that's what, again, the role of the team manager is all about. He has got to make critical decisions. They are comfortably quickest. They're not likely to find themselves 9th or lower. The problem is, it's a gamble. Alvaro Parent is sitting in the cockpit, but with 4.5 or just under 5 minutes of the session remaining, you know, eventually it's going to reach the point of no return, and I think Alvaro Parent and number 2 McLaren is safe as you could expect to be.
So car 25, Daryl O'Young, will be shown the black flag with orange disc, which is the meatball flag to us marshals, and that is basically suggesting that the rear bumper on that car must be fixed.
Well, you know, I took a punt. I didn't have the regulation in front of me specifically stating what is the case, but the stewards do, and they've advised the timing and scoring, they've advised the commentaries, and of course they advised the team that the car is not in an homologated form. Now, if it happens in a race, that's one thing, but where the session was stopped, the car got back to the pits, it then went back out again, that, this is why the interpretation of rules and regulations, again, is something that teams spend a great deal of time in understanding the rules, and implementing them to your advantage is a big plus.
So we've, well, here come the times tumbling. Nicky Mayer-Melnoff has now jumped into the 2-minute 2s. 2-minute 2.861. Francesco Castellacci is now in 3rd place. Well, he was in 3rd place, but now is Michael Bartels in the 18 Vita for One racing team BMW. He's in a 2-minute 2.928. So at the moment we've got McLaren, BMW, Ferrari, Ford, Porsche, the top 6 positions. So, and Albert von Turn and Taxis went quick in Sector 1. He's had a poor Sector 2, to be fair to Albert. He was the quickest man of anyone in Sector 1. Here he comes out of the final corner, and this will jump him up a little bit because his best time so far is in 2-minute 3.5. Across the line he comes, and he goes up into 7th place as Albert von Turn and Taxis. Matteo Cressoni's just set the fastest first sector of anyone. Bartels has the fastest middle sector of anyone. This is going to get complicated.
Yeah, I mean, all the advice Thomas Enger gave Albert von Turn and Taxis, he's going to have to use, because he's right in that sort of zone where he doesn't want to be 7th quickest, and cars all around. There is that new bodywork for the Daryl O'Young Lamborghini number 25. and I doubt they're going to be bothered fitting it because 2.5 minutes of the session remaining. Zhao Luoyang,
12th place.
Well, that doesn't matter. They're not going to get through.
No, it doesn't look like it, does it? Steph Dusseldorp has just done the fastest Sector 1 of anyone. We're watching Matteo Cressoni, who's done a pretty decent Sector 1. It was the fastest of anyone until Dusseldorp jumped in there. And now we're going to see him through turn 11, through the left-hand kink at turn 12. The Ford GT looking very lively, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but I love the look, the rear view of that Ford GT. It's got two massive exhausts, like a couple of howitzers sticking out of the back of the car. Anybody dare to come near me, I'm going to spit flames at you.
Down into the right-hander at turn 13 he comes then. What's this lap time going to be like for Matteo Cressoni? He crept into the low 2 minute 3.0 yesterday. Across the line he comes now, and he is going to do a 2 minute 2.4, quickest of anyone. So the quickest time we've seen all weekend for Matteo Cressoni. Let me just remind you, this is not for pole position, this is just for the top 8 to get through to the pole position shootout. 9th to 14th grid positions will be decided. Alvaro Parent down into 5th place, so this gamble, it might pay off for them, but it's going to be close, and Mike Parisi's in the wall.
Yes, and is that on the exit of the chicane, I wonder?
Might possibly be, but he's gone head first into the Armco barrier. This is going to give the number 1 car, Steph Dusseldorp, a chance. Across the line he comes. This is his last chance, really, because the yellow flag's going to be out. He jumps up into 3rd place. I wouldn't be surprised if this session is effectively over. Parisi's trying to get it going again. And you're right, that is coming over the crest.
It is over the crest, but also he's done the radiator on the left front of the car, so he doesn't really want to drive that car back. I'm surprised we haven't had a red flag being shown because the car is in a particular part of the racetrack. Mike Parisi gets out of it.
I know, I don't. This is actually on the exit of turn 9 because the green flag, and off goes Marc Basseng. Everyone's pushing very hard, but Marc Basseng slides through the gravel trap and recovers. So yes, that is at turn 9 because I thought that Parisi was coming towards us, but he was actually heading away from us. That's on the exit of 9. He's got on the grass on the exit, spun across into the Armco barrier. There's the gravel. You can see being kicked up from behind from Marc Basseng's little trip. So surely, and his teammate's gone off as well. So they're all having a little spin out there.
Well, pressure is on everybody to get into the top 8. Mike Parisi is 8th on the bubble, and you got Nicky Meyer-Manhoff behind him. Marc Basseng in 10th place.
And so, well, this effectively ends the session, I would suggest, because Parisi's car has been there for a while.
I mean, we couldn't see if there was a waved yellow flag before the Porsche is sitting.
Well, if there's a green flag after, the green flag goes out in response to the yellow.
So everybody must go slightly slower than the previous, or their best, through that segment. Again, the Lamborghini, a bit of grass in the radiator, and that is Albert von Turnen-Taxis.
Okay, so a mildly anticlimactic end to Q2, really, but all this means that McLaren's gamble, look at that, paid off by a tenth of a second. They finish in 8th position. So Matteo Cressoni quickest in the Ford GT. Second quickest was the 3 Ferrari of Tony Verlander. Third quickest, Michael Bartels in the BMW. Fourth quickest, the McLaren of Steph Dusseldorp. Fifth, Francesco Castellacci in the Ferrari. Sixth and 7th, the 2 Audis of Vanthor and Jarvis. 8th quickest, Parent. They are the top 8 that will go through to the final qualifying section.
Well, it is the top 8, but the number 2, what is the... I'm sorry, I'm looking down to see if the Porsche ended up.
Yeah, no,
he's there at 11.
Yeah.
So that's all over. They'll have to take a good look at the front of that car, fit new radiators. But Alvaro Parent, we said 5 minutes to go, sitting comfortably in the pits, but you never know.
No.
You roll the coins, you take your gamble, and that gamble almost Nicky Meyer-Manhoff was what in the end only what do you say, a tenth or so of a second away from putting that car, not that car, the number 1 car, that car out of the final. I mean, that's a scary moment.
Yeah, it is.
Philippe Dumas might have been sweating a bit on that one because suddenly he wasn't in the position to respond.
I think these guys will be sweating a little bit as well because both Mercedes don't make it through. The 38 car of Marc Basseng qualifying 10th. The 37 car of Nicky Pastorelli slowest in that session in 14th place. So the cars we lose, the 17 BMW of Nicky Meyer-Manhoff, the 38 of Marc Basseng, he'll start in 10th place. 11th place will be Mike Parisi in the Porsche. 12th place for Albert von Thurn and Taxis. 13th for Darrell O'Young. So Lamborghini looking massively strong coming into this weekend in Friday practice. 12th and 13th on the grid for them. This is going to give us, this is looking like it's going to give us a mega qualifying race once again, because they're all a bit jumbled up, aren't they, because of that red flag. Let's hear from Mark Basseng. I doubt he's going to be very happy with how that qualifying session went. He's with Haley Coxon.
Mark, a disappointing qualifying for you. Is there any particular reason why both cars are out?
No, but we were pushing like hell. I think you saw it on TV, and we get quicker and quicker. But this is definitely something with the balance, has to do with the balance of performance, because I think both of us were way over the limit like you are normally, and still is the gap really big. But okay, we will see for the race. Normally we're doing a good pit stops and we have a consistent car, but we will see.
Thank you.
And the brave face on it there, Mark Basseng. But as he says, the AlEnkel.com cars have come from further down. Well, not further down than this, but from lower down the field than they would have liked to have been. Albert von Thurn and Taxis looking a bit disappointed to be down in 12th place. I think he was affected by the yellow flags, because he set the fastest sector time in Sector 1 for a time being. But you can see 3 brands within 2/3 of a tenth of a second of one another, if that's not a bit of a complicated fraction for you this early in the morning. Matteo Cressoni, Tony Belander and Michael Bartels all very close together. Steph Dusseldorf only 2/10 off pole position as well. Then we've got Castellacci in 5th, so Ferrari's 2nd and 5th. All of a sudden they've had a bit of a resurgence. 6th and 7th for the Audis. Hexis Racing with Alvaro Parent throwing the dice and finishing in 8th position. But look at that, top 8, 3/10 of a second between them. Very, very close stuff. This pole position shootout is going to be mighty.
Well, it's going to be 3/10 of a second. Is anybody going to take a punt with the freshness of their rubber, or are they going to hold it back for the qualifying race later on this afternoon?
Yep, so Stefan Rossina and Darrell O'Young then in 13th place with Thomas Jaeger and Nicky Pastorelli in 14th. So we never did see what happened to Mike Parisi, but I would suggest you don't need to be Poirot to figure it out. He's gone head
Well, you can
first
see, I
into
think you
the
can see
Armco.
just off corner picture. On the outside of the corner, there's 2 black rubber marks on that curb, and I think Mike Parisi just lit up the rear of the Porsche, and the old pendulum effect has taken over, and she's gone round, baby. And as the nose swings around, it's come in contact, and with the Porsche in particular, but with a lot of these GT cars, they run split radiators in the nose, not in the center of the car, so they're at the front corners, and they are extremely vulnerable.
So the third qualifying session will start at 11 minutes past 10, which is in about 3 or 4 minutes, as Enzo Eid gets ready to head back out onto the circuit. Francesco Castellacci putting in a very, very strong lap time.
Interesting, the pads on his glasses aren't sitting on the bridge of his nose.
You get that when you put a helmet on and then put the
You
glasses
know that.
on.
You know, you're
I do.
As a regular helmet user.
Yeah, well, yeah. I do a bit of karting when I put my old helmet on.
You went up about 3 octaves. We said karting.
Let's go down to the pit lane and hear from Haley Coxon.
But looking at the lap times you guys have been getting in the Lamborghini, would have expected you to get through to Q3. What happened?
We would have expected as well. It was not a good qualifying for me. I made a mistake in the first outing on the first set of new tires, and then we were caught out by the red flag. And in the second run, there was a Porsche who spun in front of me, and another mistake of myself. So it's really no perfect lap, and the car was there. The car should have been very fast. We saw that with Thomas. It's down to the drivers, unfortunately, it must be said, and a little bit of bad luck. Yeah, can nothing be done, unfortunately. Let's hope we can make some spaces up in the race.
Thank you.
Well, I think there's a high level of honesty.
I was going to say,
which
refreshing.
is very refreshing, because racing drivers are normally not up to being frank and honest about if they make an error. They always say, "Oh, it was because the error occurred." So a lot of time being spent tidying up the racetrack there on the exit of turn 9, the Porsche back onto the flatbed truck that will take it back. But obviously it may not just be water, it could be oil that got spilled. Now that's not a part of the racetrack you'd expect a race car to get to. If it gets there, it's in trouble anyway. But they have to clean it up. They're required to do so.
Milos Pavlovic in his Ford GT, getting ready to go out, and he's going to be one of the contenders possibly for that pole position, which will be decided by this qualifying session. 8 cars going out in 10 minutes. There you can see a bit of denting done to the Armco barrier. Nothing too severe by the looks of things, which is good news as the Porsche of Mike Parisi gets pulled clear.
I think he's actually popped the headlight out on the near side front guard as well. So there's probably a substantial amount of bodywork damage, plus all that is underneath the bodywork, principally around the radiator area, and I suspect the front suspension itself on the near side will have to be replaced.
Yep, so the snatch vehicle moves back in, and we've got 50 seconds to go until this session gets underway. Stefano Telli sitting in the car, all ready to go. And let's hear from Bernard Mullner, the boss of the Porsche team. He's down in the pits with Haley Coxon.
Bernard, it's not been the qualifying session the team would have hoped. What's happening with the Porsches?
Yeah, so in the first qualifying, Benjamin was not able to show his performance, but he ended up in the gravel, so the car was out already in Q1. And in Q2 it looks very good, so when the session stopped, it was red flag. We have been on P2, and Mike tried very hard to confirm this place when the session started again, and he lost the car and he ended in the rail, so now we have to look if it is possible to repair the car for the race.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to be a bit more optimistic than that. I mean, it doesn't look that severe, Benjamin, but, you know, obviously it's what you see superficially and then what you see when you strip away all the bodywork and get down to the mechanics of the car. But it'll be on the grid, I've no doubt. Bernard will do a great job, and his team will have that car sitting in the grid, shining like a brand new 911 RS.
So we've got 3 hours until the qualifying race gets underway, so that, well, I don't know really. Hopefully that'll be enough time for them to get it sorted. Stefano Telli, the first man out on the circuit then. I was expecting a bit of a rush out onto the track, really, with it being such a long lap and it only being a 10-minute qualifying session. So
I suspect everybody outside of Otelli is looking at doing a single lap run. Preserve your tyres. The worst you're going to be is in the 4th row of the grid. And if by being in the 4th row of the grid, but you've got the freshest tyres, come the race this afternoon, that 1 hour race we're going to watch, you could be in actually better shape than your grid position indicated.
No, that's very true. So out of the pits comes Tony Verlander, and Philippe Salaquada is in that car. They haven't flicked over the transponder. There's Alvaro Parent's car we saw in the last session that was sat in the pits. It's now going to be Grégoire de Moustier taking over that one, and the BMW is still waiting in the pit lane as well. So we've got the 2 Ferraris, the Ford GT and the 2 Audis, so it's very much team strategy being played out by the looks of things. The Ford GT heading out onto the circuit now. Milos Pavlovic, the Serbian, they're hoping to have that second Ford GT with us by the time we get to the Algarve in, what, a couple of 3 weeks' time, is it? Something like that, start of July, where the next round of the GT1 World Championship in Portugal before the flyaways commence and our little holiday to China begins. So there, out of the pit lane comes the BMW. McLaren's still waiting in there. So they're obviously, yeah, as I say, with a 2-minute lap, you've got to allow 2.5 minutes or so for the out lap. It's going to be a real shootout, isn't it?
Well, again, it's this balance of you're in the top 8, so you're going to be no worse than on the 4th row of the grid. And is the balance of going for a higher grid position, let's say in the case of McLaren, they would look to go for pole, going to be offset by the usage of a set of tyres that maybe be more beneficial? It's a judgment that Philippe Dumar, the team principal or team manager of the Hex's team, will make. I suspect they're going to go for Fred Makovicky in particular for a banzai lap with that ever present smile that Fred has on his face every time you see him.
Yep, even if he's just failed to qualify in Nagara.
I'll tell you what,
like
watching the Audi coming out of turn 2, ran the curb, and it really, you could see the back of the car working.
And had the roads on the way in.
Absolutely, and straighten it up and go through the chicane.
So McLaren's still waiting, and at least there doesn't appear to be any problems. Usually if McLaren's are still in the pits, the car's getting fired up.
You can hear
Grégoire de Moustier about to head out onto the circuit. So across the line then, who have we had come through? No one has... Stefano Telli is the first man out on the circuit. He's done a 39.6 in Sector 1, which isn't a bad shout, really. Oh, runs a little bit wide on
this is a good lap from Stefano Telli. He's using the Audi and the racetrack at its limit, right on the curb there. You can see taking maybe an extra foot of corner to turn into the left hand.
Oh, it's gone into the gravel trap. Can he keep it out of the barriers? Yes, he can, but is he going across the circuit into the other barriers? No, he's not. I don't know how he's kept that.
Talk about a roller coaster.
Wow.
That was big time. He went off the exit of 9 at a rate of knots, and he did all he could to recover the car. Unfortunately, all he's done is get the car full of gravel. How he kept it off the barrier. He's gone probably about 100 metres in distance. Been the point, look, Pierre Dieudonné, concerned look in his face from the Audi team. Delighted to know that the car fundamentally is undamaged, but just chock-a-block full of gravel. And that car will certainly start on P8 for the qualifying race this afternoon. But I mean, you could be just noting the commitment from Martelli, but just got it too aggressive in turn 9. Now, there was no residue of the incident with Mike Parisi's car because that was further up the racetrack. Nevertheless, he was committed going in there. You saw how much of the curve he used. He just lunged. There is the corner. He had no chance of getting around it at all.
He didn't even run a bit wide, did he? He just flew off onto the right-hand side. But there's a chance. Well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I presume there will be yellows there, but...
Well, there's the Porsche coming back.
Yeah, so...
where the Porsche is over the crest of the hill, somewhere in the country.
Here we go.
Now he just launches the car in, does the back end, he just loses back end grip over the gravel, tries to get it straightened up. You think he actually got one of the marker boards. I mean, what a wild ride. You'd go up to one of the theme parks to get a ride like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ortelli out of this qualifying session. I don't know. Well, luckily we haven't had a red flag or anything like that, because that could have hurt the McLarens if something like that had happened.
Santa Quadra has got the fastest middle sector where that incident occurred, so there can't be too much problem.
No, exactly. So over the crest he comes down into the right-hander at turn 3. So Salaquada, Pavlovich, Eid and Stippler are the only men to set a lap time so far, and only Salaquada, Pavlovich and Eid have set anything mildly representative. He's gone purple in Sector 1 as Philippe Salaquada, so Ferrari's looking pretty strong here. I'm not sure what the yellow flag situation is down there, down at turn 9 where Ortelli has gone off, because he's the other side of the circuit. But, there's a bit of gravel being kicked up down here. Has someone had a little trip off in front of Salaquada?
Well,
maybe
the McLaren.
Maybe it's just kicking up that dust on the exit of that corner. Here we go, into turn 9. Can we see any yellow flags around? No, so I think we're all green down there, despite the car of Stefano Ortelli still being in the gravel. No, they've got it removed with the snatch vehicle.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, what a hairy, scary ride. I mean, I've seen some moments, but that one definitely is going to be on YouTube.
Yeah, it certainly is. So into the right-hander, sticking the wheels onto the grass. These guys are pushing properly hard. So let's take stock. Jelmer Berman in the BMW is currently quickest. He has done a 2-minute 2.428. Second quickest is Tony Verlander. He may be able to get himself back onto provisional pole position, though, because he's only got to find, 0.6 of a second, actually. That's a large chunk of time, but on this second lap, he's going to do a 2-minute 3.0, so he does almost exactly matches his time. There is the GT. Milos Pavlovic. How's his Sector 1 been? 39.8. Mildly inoffensive for Milos Pavlovic. This isn't going to be a corker of a lap by any stretch of the imagination. The second sector time is just here, and he does a 59.3, a second slower than the fastest middle time we've seen from Jelmer Berman. So again, this is going to be a 2-minute 3 point something, I think, for Milos Pavlovic. But we've only got 2 minutes and 15 seconds to go. Pavlovic will start now what will be his penultimate flying lap. Fred Makovicky has just gone out. The McLarens are both out there and just starting to set first sector times. It is a 2-minute 3.0 for Milos Pavlovic. So currently it's Jelmer Berman in the box seats for this provisional pole position.
But Pavlovic has fastest final sector on the end of his out lap, so he's about to go onto that lap now. So he's got a very strong start.
2 minute 1.934 for Hjalmar Berman. Comfortably the quickest lap time we've seen all weekend. So the first man to dive into the 2 minute ones is Hjalmar Berman. That puts him an incredible 1.1 seconds clear of the rest of the field at the moment. Fred Makovicky is out there. 39.6 in sector 1 is a good first sector time. This is going to be a lap to watch, I think, as he comes down into the tight left-hander at turn 10 and then kind of kinks right and left out through 11 and 12. And then we will get to see how quick this middle sector is. He'll want it to be somewhere in the region of a 58.3 and to 58.8.
Not good enough, but it certainly, I mean, it will be second, third, fourth quickest, way outside of the pace of Hjalmar Berman. I mean, that 2:01.9 came out of the bull, out of the green and black of the BMW.
Absolutely, it's a very impressive lap time. Across the line then comes Fred Makovicky. What can he do? A 2 minute 2.2. It puts him up into second place, only 0.3 of a second slower, and he's still got one more lap to run.
And importantly, that final sector, fastest of anybody. Again, the drive out of turn 14 onto the final lap, because we've only 36 seconds of this session remaining. We go back to Milos Pavlovic. Ferrari ahead of him, running slowly, pulls over to the side, lets the Ferrari and the Ford go through cleanly. So Pavlovic in fourth place on a 2:03.023.
Personal bests in sectors 1 and 2, and decent. Well, middle sector wasn't great, but we know the Ford's strong in this final sector. So what can Milos Pavlovic pull out as he comes across the line through the left-hand kink at 14? And he will get one more hot lap out of this as well. It's a 2 minute 2.7, puts him up into third position. So at the moment it's BMW, McLaren, Ford, Ferrari, Audi in our top 5. Here comes Grégoire de Moustier, and he's had a poor first sector actually, so this isn't going to be a stonker of a lap, I don't think, from de Moustier. A 2 minute 5.083. So the checker flag is out. Who have we still got to come across the line? It's a personal, it's the best sector of anyone for Fred Makovicky in sector 1. Hjalmar Berman has backed off. He's gone as quick as he can go. So Fred Makovicky could be in the box seat for pole position here. Up the hill, down towards turn 10.
Looks so easy. It didn't even have to run out to the outside of the curb. So Fred Makovicky waiting to see that second sector time. It'll come very shortly. He just goes through the exit of turn 11, and then on the exit of turn 12, that is the second intermediate time position. 0.119 down.
So this is looking like a good time from Fred Makovicky, a 50. He was very quick last time around. He is the only man, I would suggest, by the looks of things, that can take pole position away from Hjalmar Berman. The McLaren exits the final corner. Little kick up of dust. Across the line he comes and takes it. 2 minute 1.652. Fred Makovicky goes quickest. Milos Pavlovic has done a mild first sector, so we still need to keep an eye out on Milos. It's not all over yet. That Ford GT is still looking quick. Steph Dusseldorp is pretty satisfied, but that Ford GT is still out there lapping. Its middle sector, though, is a bit poor. Here it is, a 59.2 in the middle sector, so I don't think that's going to be good enough. He still needs to find somewhere in the region of a second, really, to close in on the McLaren and the BMW in front. Out of the final corner comes the Ford GT. Frank Stippler's just jumped up into third place, so now Pavlovic is in a battle to stay on the second row of the grid, and he retakes that third position. So McLaren, BMW, Ford, Audi, Ferrari, the top 5 cars, 5 brands in the top 5. Into the pits comes Grégoire de Moustier. He will start in 7th. Philippe Salaquada in the Ferrari in 5th. Enzo Eads Ferrari in 6th. De Moustier in 7th. Stefan Ortelli, after that crazy little adventure out there at turn 9, will start the race in 8th position, but only half a well, let's have a look. 0.3 of a second Fred Makovicky managed to take pole position by, and what a storming lap that was. And the WRC Audi team looking fairly satisfied with 4th place. That's their best qualifying in a while, but you can see McLaren, BMW, Ford, Audi, Ferrari are top 6 positions. Breathless qualifying session, and very entertaining qualifying session as well.
I mean, the Stefan Ortelli's, I mean, that's got to be top 10 in anybody's video selection. But there's the car and the driver, Fred Makovicky, who did what he had to do. He had one run He knew that if he waited, he would get out there. The car's got the pace, he's got the speed, and it was almost a foregone conclusion.
Let's hear from his teammate, Steph Dusseldorp.
Congratulations, Steph. A great start to the weekend.
Yeah, it's a fantastic start. We didn't expect it. We had some troubles yesterday, but we knew we had the speed. And yeah, Fred did an amazing lap. Really happy, and really happy to score the first pole. Yeah, it will be an exciting weekend for sure.
Thank you.
Indeed, so it will be Steph Dusseldorp starting that car from pole position in the qualifying race. Later on today, 1:30 we go on air for the qualifying race, so pretty much 3 hours from now you'll be back with us, won't you, to check out the qualifying race. Chance of rain, you're suggesting?
Well, I mean,
the forecast was suggesting it.
There was showers.
Lightning last night.
Oh, there was lightning last night. There was actually rainfall last night in Bratislava.
Well, here's a look at the top 7, and it's Hexis BMW of Jelmer Berman by a tad under 0.3 of a second. The Ford GT in third place. They've really got their act together, have Sunred, after coming into this championship, as you say, at the last minute, really starting to get to grips with that Ford now. Frank Stippler and Oliver Jarvis in fourth place. Philippe Salaquada and Tony Vander in fifth in their Ferrari, ahead of their sister car of Enzo Ede and Francesco Castellacci. Nice to see the Ferraris a little bit more representative pace. We see Enzo Ede and Demoustier struggled a little bit in that qualifying session, mainly because of the yellow flags that were out there. And eighth place will be Stefano Telli after he set a pretty decent first sector, actually. There is the front end of the Mike Parisi Porsche, and it doesn't look too bad. You're the 911 expert.
Yes, I mean, but what you see there, that'll all be taken off. It'll either be binned or maybe go back and try to sack. But there, the left front headlight, that's gone. But it's the radiator, whether it's the oil and water or just one of the two on the left-hand side. Now, that's what we can see. What we cannot see is whether there's any damage done to that left front suspension.
Let's hear from our second place man on the grid, Jelmer Berman.
Congratulations, Jelmer. Front row start for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great. I mean, the guys, they worked literally all night. They haven't slept since yesterday, just because we had to change an engine overnight. So, I mean, it's great to reward them with a front row start for this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So Jelmer Berman, who has had a very successful short campaign in GT1. You may remember he joined the championship. His debut in the championship was the end of last year at the round in San Luis. He joined the Exim Team China Corvette squad and won both the qualifying and the championship races. So his debut into GT1 was impressive, and he's continued to impress with his pace in the course of this season, has Jelmer Berman, and he has stuck it second place today. There you can see Mike Parisi, and interesting to find out exactly what happened. Andreas Zuber, you can see there on the left-hand side in the trendy white glasses. He didn't even get to drive the car so far, so he's going to be starting it blind. Here's a look at the championship standings then coming into the qualifying race later on. You can see Dusseldorp and Makovicky on pole position and on top of the standings. Their joint championship leaders, Thomas Jaeger and Nicky Pastorelli, 14th on the grid. That's really not good news for them. Otelli and Van Thor will start in 8th place. Bartels and Berman will start second. Basseng and Binkelhock will start in 10th place, I think it was, yes. And Matt Halliday and Mike Parisi will start in 11th. So really, it's a pretty mixed up grid. There you can see where the championship points are as far as the teams are concerned. Let's have a look back at this qualifying session. When it all got underway, it was the Mercedes that went out at the front of the field and started to get in some of their hot laps. We found out that the tyres take a little bit of time to heat up. Albert von Taxis was delighted because his teammate Thomas Enger was absolutely on fire in that first qualifying session, the first man to go into the mid 2-minute fives. The Mercedes going through that little chicane and dealing with it fairly well.
Yeah, the chicane is actually working very well. I think everybody now are very happy, having done a bit of tuning at it over practice yesterday. But the back of the Lamborghini Darrell Young, it detached itself from the chassis. I suspect it was driver-induced.
Yep, so there was the missing piece on the Lamborghini. The number 9 Porsche had a fun little time flying through the quick right-left at the chicane. Matt Halliday doing a decent enough job in that first segment, doing a 2-minute 4.2. But then in the second segment, Mike Parisi and Mark Basseng and his teammate Nicky Pastorelli all had little trips into the scenery. Mike Parisi's was the most serious, bringing out the red flag. Ford GT was the quickest though. Matteo Cressoni absolutely storming across the line. He's going to be starting that Ford GT as well in the race later on, which is definitely something to watch.
And if you think back to Navarra, that is a fast starting car.
Stefano Telli had a little bit of fun on the exit of turn 9, got out of shape and managed to avoid that barrier, speared across the circuit, managed to avoid that barrier too.
I mean, once the car hit the tarmac, it just took a bite, and there's nothing Otelli could do. But I do think he was full on the throttle as he was going through the gravel to try to recover it.
But Jelmer Berman crossed the line. It looked for all the world as though he'd taken provisional pole position, but it was the number 1 car of Fred Makovicky that ended up on pole position. They will start the qualifying race on pole. Join us for it at 1:30 local time, about 3 hours from now. Thank you very much.